As you guessed it, the car market is collapsing and dozens of dealerships are closing. After about $24.2 million loss, it looks as though about 18 popular locations are about to slam their doors shut. I mean, you can only go so long and not sell vehicles where the floor plan costs all start to add up, where those charges, you have to pay all sort of interest charges to keep those vehicles on the lot. And we know a lot of these manufacturers, for example, the Stellantis products with the Jeeps that aren't selling, Rams that weren't selling very well, Dodges aren't selling, and even Nissan had to incentivize grossly. They're having to push these products out the door because they're not selling. But as these vehicles sit on the lot and the manufacturers continue to push more allocations out to the dealer level, the dealers can't sell what they've got. And what we're seeing are a lot of these vendors with vehicles that sit, a day's supply of 120, 130, 150 days supply. They're not selling. And there's many that I look back, if you check some of the resources, you're seeing a lot of these vehicles are sitting around for months and even years. I've even seen 2022s on the lot. And now we're not even talking about floor plan costs anymore. It's sheer overhead. And of course, they have to take some serious losses when they sell those, if they even sell them. But it looks like the inevitable has actually finally showed up. We all knew that this was coming. We all knew the day was coming when these large conglomerates can only put on a happy face for so long, while they can share resources when a lot of these massive corporations, they own, dozens of different dealerships. They can pull resources from one to the other. They can, hemorrhage loss over here, but they can make the wins on a different brand, and they bring it all together. They can share HR, IT resourcing, and they're able to juggle and shift back and forth. But there gets a point where even having that flexibility of having multiple different types of manufacturers under their umbrella, they can only push and pull so far before the losses literally overtake the entire operation. And that's what we're starting to see. The market is collapsing. People aren't buying enough vehicles to sustain this marketplace. Even with these incentives, the writing's on the wall. I mean, people are underwater. We're seeing repossessions at an all-time high. Less and less people are buying, and certainly at these prices. And people have spoken. A lot of you viewers are telling me constantly, we need to see 40 or 50% off of what we're seeing today. When they're asking $80,000 for a Jeep Wrangler, you know that something's broken somewhere. A Ram pickup truck, half ton for 90 grand, something's broken here. And yet this is what we're seeing out on the market, out in the field. So you knew something was going to snap. You knew it was going to break, and this is the breaking point. Right now, we're starting to see all of these factors coming to a head, and we're seeing it right here in real time. The way it's shaping up, Auto Canada Inc. has about 18 US locations that they've missed the mark. They haven't been able to pivot quick enough to adjust for the market conditions. And now they're looking at literally closing each and every one of their 18 locations, causing a massive disruption and a massive wave in the marketplace. This is going to result in massive losses, job losses, of course, losses to these corporations and conglomerates. But I mean, most importantly, it's the people working on the front end that are potentially losing their jobs. There's a lot of money on the line here. And this was coming. We knew it was coming. And no, we're not talking about AutoNation. And we know that Brandon is over on Car Questions Answered talking about AutoNation potentially folding, or some of the big challenges and headwinds that they're faced with and having dealership losses. Obviously, they're dealing with their own right. That's a whole nother conversation. The group I'm looking at, I look online here, and the article I pull up is there's a car dealer group. They're based in Illinois, but ultimately a Canadian group, but they're in Illinois, and they're branded as the Leader Automotive Group. And what they're seeing is this long-term trend of major losses. But at the second quarter, as we hit the third quarter, we know people are tapped out. And with the exception of the odd long weekend where you might get a little vacation surges, for the most part, the trend is downwards, and they're losing money at an alarming rate. Then to make matters worse, we all know in June, CDK and the shutdown, the application that manages a lot of their inventories, the sales, even the service side of it, that was shut down in June. And that took a huge impact, had a huge impact on a lot of these dealerships. Because of that, that did take a direct toll. And that's one of the reasons why some of the used car market is taking a bit of a beating in this environment too. And this is in fact one of the major contributing factors to these dealerships shutting down. CDK was enough to push a lot of these dealers over the edge. They saw profit losses go from $45.2 million in 2023 for the second quarter down to about $33.1 million in the same time frame. Now we know that the inventory is stacking up. We know the inventory is there. So it's not that there's a shortage of any sort. Supply and demand isn't necessarily kicking into high gear. What we are dealing with is the fact that prices are high. Consumers aren't buying. They're overloaded with all sorts of consumer debt, whether it's their house, whether it's food. Inflation is taking a toll. And of course, just everything. Credit cards, bills to pay, not to mention, of course, student loans are all having a major impact on the fact that people aren't buying vehicles, cars, trucks, SUVs like they probably once were. And now as a result, this group is seeing a major loss. As a matter of fact, the company's revenue went down from about $1.8 billion down to $1.6 billion this year from last. Now, while that doesn't sound like a massive amount, it sounds incremental. Don't forget there's all these operating costs and other baseline costs that are incurred in that. So that is a big, substantial loss where, 10, 15%, maybe almost 20% loss 1 year to the next. That's substantial. Now they're having to dig down deep and figure out what they're going to do for damage control. And as I pull up this article, it basically says AutoCanada Executive Chairman Paul Antony said did not respond swiftly enough to adequately counter increasingly challenging market demands. He also adds, our recent performance has not met our own expectations, and it has become clear to me that we need to further deepen our focus on both delivering or deleveraging, he's told analysts on a conference call earlier this month. So clearly the writing was on the wall earlier in the month, but now here we're finally seeing the fallout as a result of these lacking of pivoting, and of course naturally the market conditions aren't what conducive to keeping dealerships thriving. So we all know it's very tricky conditions right now, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to walk down car lots these days. And I've stepped foot in many car dealerships here in this last 6 months, even within the last year, and I've seen the foot traffic really just not there. People don't have the money. And yes, there's the odd person going in, and you're seeing the odd pickup truck drive down the road that's a brand new 2024. The sad reality is not many people can truly afford that. And even those few that can are often slip through the cracks, able to negotiate their way at the bank to get enough money to pull together to buy that new vehicle. All it means is most people, the vast majority, 70-80% of people are borrowing money from the bank to buy that next vehicle. Means, of course, due to depreciation, the first 3-4 years they're underwater until everything stabilizes. People don't have that kind of money just to play with anymore, especially when we're talking about a truck that no longer costs 30 grand. It now costs $100,000. That's a lot of money for people, especially considering, wages haven't followed suit. It's a tough time for certain. And I'm looking right here. The company reported a net income of $2.4 million. That is a net income from its Canadian dealerships, which is almost nothing. That's negligible. However, it's not a loss in the second quarter, but a loss of $35.5 million on its U.S. operations. AutoCanada discussed plans to halt all of its mergers and acquisition activity at this moment. Clearly, they're in no place to sell, buy. Everything's a freeze right now, but clearly they're making some big, hard moves. And so this is a really, really tough time. And we're seeing this all over. AutoNation, there's AutoCanada, and there's a lot more of these large corporate conglomerates that are essentially feeling the pinch, feeling the burn, trying to push hard to sell their products. But it's this floor plan costs, it's fixed costs, of course, keeping the lights on, just that they can't afford it anymore. They're not overcoming those fundamental base costs when they're not selling enough vehicles to offset the losses. So anyway, due to a recent weak performance, Antony also said the company has initiated strategic reviews of all unprofitable non-core assets in Canada and the United States. Antony comments that this is economic uncertainty and has also mentioned that all discretionary spending is to be frozen immediately. Antony's got a lot of comments now. He also quotes that the AutoCanada does not have the competence or patience to run them successfully after the financial analysts started questioning him about their performance. It's clear that they really had to look down deep and figure this out. But spending time and energy to properly turn those stores, he admitted, I don't think this makes sense given the current conditions. So it looks like there's far too much headwinds trying to turn these stores around. And Antony is in a position where it doesn't see the long-term outlook as being very positive. And so a lot of these stores really have nowhere to go but closing the doors. Stop the hemorrhaging, stop the bleeding. I've heard of people comment that you couldn't even give a Dodge dealership or a Ram dealership to somebody looking to get in on the market, even with the franchise name, because they're losing money at an alarming rate. I mean, with all these allocations constantly being pushed from Stellantis headquarters, and yet they're not able to sell it out on the front line, it just leaves them in a world of hurt between a tug of war here. It's just an ugly scene. And again, it doesn't appear that anything's going to get any better anytime soon. It's going to take a major market turnaround to fix some of these big problems. And Samuel Cochrane, which is the chief financial officer for this Auto Canada group, has also commented that there's some major losses, which kind of looks like a $12.7 million used inventory, about a $4.7 million management transition fee, and as well a $4.5 million floor plan cost, which we know that's just rising. These vehicles aren't selling. Floor plan costs continue to go up and up and up because they're borrowing money. It's no different than you or I. If we have to take money from the bank, we have to pay monthly interest charges. It's the same thing for the dealerships. They don't own all those vehicles outright. They own a small part of it, and they're paying down monthly interest charges to have those vehicles on the lot. So the idea is to get the car on the lot and turn it around within 30 to 60 days. That's where there's a bit of a buffer zone before they start incurring some of those interest charges. But there's incurring a ton of these floor plan costs now, and that's a damaging blow. So the market, the writing is on the wall. These car dealers are suffering. Not that a lot of consumers are necessarily feeling sorry for that, but that's the reality. And the sad state of this is the less of these dealerships around, the more of a, if I could say it, monopoly the market becomes. I mean, more diversity means that you have selection. It means everybody's going to sharpen their pencils. But the market conditions just aren't there. A lot of these dealerships, in my mind, the manufacturers, the dealerships, we see where some of the big costs are. Increased labor costs, of course, with union like UAW and a lot of the other union costs for frontline workers. Now, granted, they're the ones actually creating the cars, working the overtime, making these products. But then you look at the ever-increasing costs that these CEOs are taking on, $30, $40 million annual salaries. That's got to be a major parasitic cost, not to mention the market downturn that we're seeing, and the overall price of these vehicles are just too much for the customer to bear. This is all turning up into one big ugly storm, and this is a catastrophe that's leading to a lot of dealerships starting to close their door. They see that there's no way out. They see there's no possibility of conducting business. And then we see other manufacturers from China coming in, knocking on the back doors. We're transitioning into the electrified market with heavy mandates from governments and environmental officials saying thou shalt by 2030, 2035. And to fast track these manufacturing processes and get these new vehicles online and into the system, they have to charge more for their internal combustion vehicles in providing the money and the funding to research and develop these products. But in the meantime, they've got the Chinese markets knocking down, like BYD, already setting up shop in Mexico, trying to urge their way in through the US and, of course, in Canada. Even though Canada's latest tariff application of 100% against Chinese-made vehicles, that's not going to stop them. This is just, we're putting a piece of bubble gum in that leaky dike, in that leaky dam. And this is just what we're starting to see. Interest rates are still high or high enough. Obviously, inflation still high or high enough. And people just aren't buying. Can you blame them? I mean, this is taking a toll on everybody. So at the end of the day, we're dealing with a real car market crisis, and these dealerships are starting to not close their doors, slam their doors. Love to hear your thoughts down below. Are you feeling sorry for them? Do you think this may be an opportunity to get some great deals? I think there could be some wholesale blowouts here as time goes on. I think we're going to start to see more desperation in the market, and there may be opportunities for some good deals. All right. Definitely want to check that. Definitely want to check out that. Sorry. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.